Okay. Can you hear me? Can anyone make a response so that I know,
Yes, Professor.
you guys can hear me?
Yes, Professor, we can hear you.
All right. That's good. All right. Can you uh answer me one more time?
Yes, Professor.
All right. That's good. All right. Let me proceed now. Okay. So this is a midterm preparation 2026 exam date, uh, Monday next week, right? April 20. Make sure the date is right. Yeah. All right. And same room, same classroom that we regularly uses, right? All right. That's the place the exam will take place, and it is going to be open book, open computer, open internet. Okay. So you have to have your computer ready, and then you should set up the VPN. You need a VPN because the school blocks the Ethereum and Bitcoin related sites, but you need them. So you need to have your VPN working for you. Okay. And then at the end of the exam, you will submit your exam to me and TA, Sungmin, okay? And save your file name as your name, okay? And you have to use Times New Roman font size 12, strictly enforced, because we have a limitation on the space, and it basically limits the number of words in your answers. Okay. All right. So let me briefly show you how it looked like in 2025. So here is the 2025 midterm exam. Okay. Take a look. All right. And then the exam rule, same thing that I have explained. Okay. And it has limitation in the size of the box, right? So less than 81 words. You need to define the primary functions of money and explain how each supports the operation of a modern economy, things like that. And explain the concept of the double coincidence of ones. Why is this a limitation in barter economies? And how does the introduction of money resolve this problem? 50, less than 50 words, right? So under high inflation, how does the choice between settling a debt with physical goods versus fiat? Hold on, there are other students joining, right? Other students have joined. Under high inflation, how does the choice between the settling a debt and so on, right? And number four, regarding Hayek's argument on denationalization of money. Hold on, another person joining. Okay. Hayek's argument in denationalization of money and so on, right? You can take a look. And then there is there was an essay question, in the 2025 South Korean presidential election, candidates such as Lee Jae-myung and Han Dong-hoon have proposed large-scale AI investment pledges, like $100 trillion. I mean, 100 trillion won, 200 trillion won, respectively. And then if you consider the principles of sound money discussed in the class, you can evaluate the risk of inflation. and so on, right? And then I want you to provide, a solid essay based on the class materials, okay? So that's one thing. And there are technical parts, for example, Bitcoin, find the hash of your full name. So, you need to write down your name so that we can verify it, right? And use a Bitcoin block, 893,515. And then how many transactions are there in this block, and what is the difficulty of this block, you know, computer probability P of randomly finding a valid hash per attempt, things like that, okay? And then we can talk about, Bitmain S21 Pro miner. I can point it to you. And then how many of them you have to purchase to be able to launch a 51% attack. So you need to understand the concept of 51% attack, right? So which have been covered in my lecture, right? And then you can translate it to money. How much money do you need to invest in to be able to launch a 51% attack? That all depends on the difficulty level of the current blocks, right? And then, in terms of energy, you can talk about it, uh, and then you can talk about the current amount of block mining reward, right? If it is giving you, 3.125 bitcoins per block. Is this going to be right price, or is it cheap, or expensive compared to the energy spent, and then the money that you have to pay for the electric cost to mine a block, things like that, right? So they can compare that, right? Hold on. Who is there anyone asking me any question a moment ago? No? Okay. Then I'll proceed. Okay. And there was a Ethereum question. You have to make use of the Ether scan, right? We have done a lot of practices already, right? In this year's Ethereum, experimentations, right? Hands-on experiments, right? And then back then I had only 4 questions like this. Okay. How many total transactions are there in this block? Okay. And then what are 2 different types of transactions in Ethereum? Okay. So uh, that was the Ethereum. Actually, there were more. Okay. So in this block, how many transactions are there for each type? And then locate the second transaction with the transaction hash starting with this, right? Then you can locate it, and then uh, you can take a look at what type of transaction was that. And then actually this is, US dollar token, okay? Circle US dollar token smart contract, right? There was included, right, in the transaction. And then basically I was asking, find the Solidity code for this smart contract, and its byte code and OP code, right? You should understand, what OP code is, what byte code is. Basically, Solidity is a programming, uh, 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 human-friendly programming code, right? You need to compile it, then you have a byte code, and then byte code is basically sequence of opcode, right? All right, and then I was asking the event of merge, right? Uh, that was, executed September 15, 2022. And then I was asking, what was this event about? Okay, things like that. All right. All right. I think that's about it for the midterm 2025, right? Let me go back to now midterm prep 2026, all right? So what I mean by, this, uh, you know, file name, and then submit your save under your own name, and then you have to use the Times New Roman 12 size font, right? So after you have seen the 2025 midterm, okay? So here now I'm going to go over, briefly of the, course coverage so far, okay? From week first week to seventh week, okay? So so here, part one is about sound money and Bitcoin economics. Okay, and then key topics that I covered was 2008 financial crisis, and then Federal Reserve Board's response. I covered, and then the Bretton Woods system and the Nixon's end of the gold standard. I covered. And then there were four functions of money we discussed, right? You know, uh, unit of metric, and medium of exchange, deferred payment, means of deferred payments, and then the means of saving, right? Things like that. And then I discussed the Hayek decentralization of money. And then there I distinguished between Austrian economy and Keynesian economies, right? And then I discussed Triffin's dilemma, right? And Trump's administration's Bitcoin reserve proposal, right? I talked about it. And then sound money principles, inflation, and fiat currency risks, right? And then you can entertain these review Q&As, right? Define four primary functions of money. What is the double coincidence of ones, and then how does money solve it? And then under high inflation, who benefits, debtor or creditor? And then paying back with the fiat money and versus paying back with the physical goods. Summarize Hayek's argument in the denationalization of money. What is the Triffin dilemma? And then and so on. Okay. Now part two, we have a Bitcoin technical fundamentals. I have covered. Key topics was SHA-256 hashing, and avalanche effect, proof of work puzzle. And then I went to mining difficulty, basically. Using the SHA-256, we can create a proof of work puzzle, and then you can increase or decrease the difficulty of this puzzle, right? And then that can be controlled by target value. And then we talked about elliptic curve digital signature algorithm key pairs, right? Private key, public key pairs, elliptic curves, and from the private key randomly selected, and then generating public key, and then from the public key you can create Bitcoin address, right? By going through SHA-56, RIPE MD 160, and base 58 check, right? Base 58 check, remove certain characters so that it is human friendly, but it still looks gibberish, right? And then we talked about UTXO model, locking script and unlocking script. And then when these two met together, it either opens up or doesn't open, okay? So only the person who has the right private key for the lock can, open it, okay? So that the, transaction can be made, okay? And 51% attacks economies, halving schedule, what is the total remaining BTC supply, those things I covered. And then Satoshi Nakamoto's double spend probability analysis. And then actually this analysis have some error in it. So I have given you, our derivation of correct probability analysis. See, I want you to know the difference between the two. All right, and then I have prepared some examples for uh, using some Bitcoin block 893515, and then basically you can take a look at this difficulty analysis, and then you can review some of the Q&As, right, for the Bitcoin. And then part 3 is Ethereum fundamentals, which was covered weeks 4 to 5. The key topics that we discussed was state transition machine, right? And Ethereum virtual machine. Ethereum virtual machine is basically Turing complete. And then there is a need for introduction of gas, right? Because a Turing complete machine might fall into an infinite loop, right? So there has to be a gas limit so that the infinite loop can be stopped. Okay, and EOA, externally owned account versus contract accounts we discussed, and then we can make transactions, and then transaction has a difference between different from messages, right? Messages from one contract account to the other contract account, right? And EOA is a human, who has the private key can initiate, right? Ethereum externally owned accounts. That is the transactions, right? And UTXO versus account model. What are the differences? Okay, and EVM OP codes I have reviewed, and then Solidity basics, and then the merge event DAO Hack 2016 we briefly discussed, and basically the merge 2025 September 15 was transition from POW to proof of stake system, right? So in the Ethereum case, X amount of energy spent to create blocks, right, was the security. But after it has moved from POW to POS, proof of stake, basically staking Ethereum, and then the amount of the Ethereum staked is the protection, okay, against the adversarial attacks, right? So it is X dollar security. Okay, how much money is staked to protect the Ethereum network? So that is the argument. Okay, after that, the actual consensus algorithm that they use has been transitioned to, Byzantine fault tolerance algorithms. Okay, so that is what BFT is about. Okay, all right. So basically that's that, and then we talked about DeFi, decentralized exchange, like a Uniswap, and NFT, non-fungible token, and then layer two rollups, and then DAO governance. Okay. So here, couple of several Q&As regarding these, course materials, and then you can read about it. Okay, and then week 6 to 7, we have done extensive, hands-on experiments, installing MetaMask and then wallets, and then you have sent your coins to the other students in the class, right? And then you verified it, and then you have understood what the nonce, how the nonce is used in Ethereum transactions, right? And then how to cancel already transmitted transactions, right, within a short span of uh, uh, with a short span of window time, then you can cancel these transaction. And base fee versus priority fee, and we discussed. And basically, it's a market mechanism. If you pay more, your transaction will be included in the block by the validators, faster, right? So if you want a faster transaction execution, then you want to pay more, okay? So, and then we discussed the Solidity, the programming language using EVM. And ERC20 token we generated, and then ERC721 NFT. We just discussed it, but there is a procedure to do it, right, in the class materials, right? So you can review it, okay? And then actually, I want you to be able to go through it and then mint ERC 721 NFTs, okay? Should be able to do it, okay? All right. And interesting dApps we discussed, dice game, and we discussed, and you have done actually uh, hands-on experiment. And DEX, decentralized exchange using Uniswap. You are not fully able to follow within the class, but we have given you the direction, how to follow, this direction, and then experience this AMM, automated market maker algorithm. At least I want you to understand this mechanism, right? AMM mechanism, okay? All right, and the Worldland part I didn't discuss, so you don't have to worry about this part, okay? And here are the part 5, computer use checklist. So the following task may be asked during the exam, right? So for example, compute hash of your full name, right? And then you should be able to look up certain block of Bitcoin network and then be able to interpret it, okay? And so interpretation means here, from there, you can find the difficulty, then you can find the probability P of, geometric distribution, right? And then once you understand this, you can drive the, distribution of the random variable K, and so on. And then if you are given some mining equipment, like Bitmain S21 Pro, like then how many units do you need to launch 51% attack and so on, which I have already discussed. So basically, these are the list of computer use checklist. You can take a look. And then finally, I have exam tips. So there are world limits, strictly enforced. So you should not expand the size of the box to increase the more words, right? In your answers, that will drive, zero credit. So you should strictly, meet the demands, okay? And use Times New Roman font size 12, and so on and so on. The rest of them, I think I have already explained. So I'll stop here. So do you have any question? That's it for my preparation. And then I will send these two files, midterm 2025, which is this file, and midterm preparation file, which is this one, in the email, okay? And then I recorded this session, so I will, let you know the address, where to find this address. The where to find this YouTube link. Okay. All right. Yes, professor. Will it be mostly theory, or we have to perform some activity like we did in class? Yes, you have to do. You should be able to do some hands-on coding and experiments, right? Professor, we can use tools available for the exam. All tools available for the exam. Yes, you can bring any tools that you have developed, uh, you know, inside the class. Bring your computer, okay? But don't rely too much on the, you know, AI, right? Because you should be able to understand, what to ask to the AI, right? To get the right answer within the right time, right? Within the limited amount of time. So interesting. So internet searching is allowed? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Internet search is allowed, but there is a time limitation. So you should understand what's going on. So uh, you know, you should have done these experiments, hands-on experiments by yourself, and then your computer should have been, should have equipped with all the environments, right? You don't want to install within the exam time, right? Okay. All right. So, do you have any other question? Yeah, or you should, answer your question, answers in English only. English only, okay? Yeah. No Korean answers. Do you have any question? Any further question? All right. No one is asking me any questions. So I think I'll stop right here, right? And then moment later, I will send you these two files. And maybe 1 hour later, I will send you the URL of the recorded session. Okay. Yes, you can use AI. Yes, you can use AI, of course, because the internet is allowed. So only during the exam, I don't want you guys to discuss. Okay. So there will be a TA proctoring the exam. So no conversation between students are allowed. No conversation allowed. But you can use AI, you can use internet, you can do whatever, right? Using your computer. But in order to use AI, within the amount of time, limited, you should know what to ask. Okay. All right. So I think that's it for today. I'll stop right here. Okay. All right. Bye bye.